a new treasurer. Former State Senator Tony Vargas secured the spot after defeating Christina Torres last night.
First Alert 6, Philip Catafamo joins us live in the newsroom now. And Philip, you spoke with Mayor John Ewing, who served as treasurer at one point. What does he have to say about Tony Vargas?
Well, Aaron and Jacqueline, a year ago today, Mayor John Ewing secured his current position of mayor. You'll remember he served as treasurer for Douglas County for about 2 decades before that. Once he took office as mayor, his chief deputy Tim Cavanaugh stepped in. However, Cavanaugh opted not to run for the position this election cycle. This afternoon, Mayor Ewing thanked Cavanaugh for his service to the community. He called the position critical to the county because the treasurer is in charge of collecting and distributing tax dollars. Mayor Ewing says he's had many conversations with Tony Vargas. I asked Mayor Ewing what advice he'd pass along to Tony.
Continue the things that are going well. If you see opportunities to make things better, take those opportunities working with that great team out there and continue to raise the bar for that particular office and the level of service they provide to the community as well as the other governmental entities.
Now that Tony Vargas won the primary, he'll advance to November's general election. For now, he is running unopposed. In the newsroom, I'm Philip Catafamo, First Alert 6. Back to you, Jacqueline.
All right, Philip, thank you. Now, in one of